10,000 crimson targeting lasers painted the flagship in absolute silence. A ceramic coffee cup steamed gently on the split-screen communication feed, completely out of place amid a galactic standoff. Admiral Kethvar stared at the primary tactical display. His blue skin looked like chalk under the bridge lights. Beside him, Dr. Yilin gripped the railing, watching the blue glow of 1,000 status screens reflect off Admiral Sarah Chen's gray hair. She did not smile. She offered no threats. She simply waited, patient and inevitable. The galaxy held its breath. I thought I understood power. I was wrong. Keep listening to learn how a dead world fights. 6 hours earlier, the approach had been a triumphant parade. 200 Zephyrian hegemony warships slipped past the orbit of a frozen, ringed giant at the edge of the system. Kethvar stood tall by the command throne. He crossed his lower forearms behind his back, a traditional gesture of absolute dominance reserved for planetary governors. His yellow eyes scanned the orbital imaging data with unfiltered contempt. Chemical rockets, fragmented atmospheric signatures, unshielded communication arrays broadcasting in primitive radio frequencies. It was almost insulting how vulnerable they appeared. A divided, fractured species clinging to a single habitable zone. Perfect prey for an expanding empire that measured its worth in conquered star systems. Dr. Yilin leaned over his diagnostic console. His silver skin prickled with a sudden, cold sweat. Supreme Commander, the deep space buoys are transmitting. Kethvar did not turn. More orbital debris. An ancient beacon, sir, Yilin murmured, his hands shaking slightly as he routed the translation to the main projector. It warns all spacefaring species that the Sol system is forbidden. A booming laugh echoed across the metallic decking of the bridge. Kethvar bared his sharp teeth. 12 systems have fallen to our plasma batteries, Doctor, so we do not fear ghosts. But Yilin could not shake the chill. The hegemony archives contained records of only 3 restricted species in the known universe. These fragile, unarmored bipeds were the third. They required artificial atmospheric mixtures just to leave their gravity well. They died if deprived of nutrients for a mere handful of solar cycles. They possessed no natural armor, no venom, no redundant organs. By all biological metrics, they should have gone extinct millennia ago. Yet something was missing from the orbital scans, a terrifying absence of standard defensive grids, no patrol cruisers, no minefields, just empty, silent space. Open a channel, Kethvar ordered. The forward screen flickered, resolving into a cramped, utilitarian command center. A human female appeared. She was shorter than hegemony average, her uniform starkly devoid of medals or conquest marks. Deep lines framed her eyes, speaking of a lifetime spent managing quiet catastrophes. I am Admiral Sarah Chen, she stated. Her voice carried a clinical, polite neutrality. This is Admiral Kethvar of the hegemony. Surrender your central governing body immediately or face planetary orbital bombardment. Kethvar leaned forward, casting a physical shadow over the camera pickup. Chen picked up a worn brass compass from her desk. She turned it over in her hands. The metal was heavily scorched. My grandfather kept this in his pocket when the orbital bombs fell during our resource wars, she said quietly. Said it always pointed home, even when home was burning. Kethvar frowned. Your historical anecdotes are irrelevant, yield. We politely decline, Chen replied. A high-pitched whine bled through the flagship's failing acoustic dampeners. Yilin's primary sensor, sweet flared blinding white, forcing him to shield his eyes. Radiation spike, Yilin shouted. On the starboard visual feed, asteroid Alpha 7 simply ceased to exist. It was not shattered. It was not broken into manageable slag. The 3-kilometer chunk of iron and ice vaporized into a cloud of subatomic dust in less than a microsecond. Kethvar's forearms dropped to his sides. What hit it? Unknown energy signature, Yilin stammered. He tapped his console frantically, trying to isolate the weapon's footprint. Origin Point is a localized platform concealed within the debris field. Crush it, Kethvar snapped. Before the tactical officer could lock plasma cannons, Chen's voice drifted back over the channel. That was a demonstration, Admiral. You are currently surrounded. The sensor map updated. Dozens of hollowed-out planetoids suddenly registered massive thermal blooms, burning hot against the absolute zero of the void. They hide in rocks, Kethvar sneered. The blue tint of his skin had faded to a sickly pale shade, but his hubris remained intact. He refused to be humbled by scavengers. Call the armada, all of it. Yilin hesitated. Sir, protocol requires Imperial authorization for a 1,000-ship deployment. The energy cost alone. Do it, Kethvar roared. The metallic tang of ozone flooded the bridge as the subspace relay engaged, drawing immense power from the flagship's core. For 20 agonizing minutes, the two forces drifted in silence. Yilin watched the human commander on the screen. She didn't move to reinforce her positions. She didn't launch interceptors. She just sat there, reading a datapad, completely unbothered by the impending arrival of the largest fleet in galactic history. Then space tore open. 800 heavy cruisers and 200 dreadnoughts spilled from warp space, filling the void with overlapping energy shields. The combined mass of the hegemony navy blotted out the distant stars, a terrifying monument to industrial conquest. Now, Kethvar hissed, show them true power. Yilin analyzed the updated telemetry. The human defenses should have scrambled. They should have, or rather, any sane species would have retreated immediately. Instead, a single encrypted signal shot from Luna Base toward the local star. He zoomed in on a microscopic life sign, reading from a terrestrial orbital habitat. A child, no more than 6 human years old, pressed a hand against a viewing port. The child wasn't crying. The child was watching, completely unafraid of the 1,000 warships hanging above. It was a profound, chilling display of absolute trust in an unseen protector. Deep within the solar corona, a massive magnetic disturbance fractured the sun's outer layer, sending a ripple of distorted gravity across the system. Energy wave approaching, Yilin reported. His voice was barely a whisper. It is coming from the star itself. Kethvar marched to the primary viewport. Flares cannot pierce our shields. It is not a flare. The solar corona parted. Dark, angular shapes slid out from the blinding plasma. They were not ships. They were mobile, stellar-powered matter conversion platforms, each the size of a small moon. They had been sleeping in the furnace of the star, drawing energy for centuries, waiting for this exact moment. On the split screen, Admiral Chen slowly picked up her mug. She took a deliberate sip. The ceramic clinked softly against her desk, the tiny mundane sound transmitting perfectly over the open comms. Execute Protocol 7, Chen ordered. The entire solar system woke up. Asteroid belts shifted formation with terrifying synchronization. Gas giant moons reoriented their rotational axes to align hidden antimatter batteries. The void filled with millions of active sensor pings, locking onto every single Zephyrian hull. Yilin's hand stopped shaking. The terror was too absolute, too profound for a physical response. His hands were perfectly still. Every piece of intelligence they had gathered had been a deliberate lie. The humans had pruned their visible technology, projecting weakness, inviting the hegemony to step perfectly into the jaws of a trap built over 300 years. Yilin stared at the impossible sensor readings. 10,000 crimson targeting lasers painted the hegemony flagship in absolute silence. The great Zephyrian armada, conquerors of 12 systems, was suddenly nothing more than a collection of fragile glass ornaments suspended in a shooting gallery. They were outgunned, outmaneuvered, and entirely at the mercy of a species they had come to enslave. Chen finally looked up from her datapad. You have exactly 60 seconds to power down your weapon grids. Kethvar gripped the command console, his sharp teeth ground together. We are the hegemony, and we do not surrender to primitive bait. You are a trespasser in a graveyard, Chen corrected softly. We could have destroyed your fleet the moment you crossed the outer marker, but we chose to give you a chance to leave with your lives. Yilen watched the targeting lock indicators turn from yellow to solid red. The stellar platforms were fully charged. The spatial distortion from their weapon bays was already warping the local gravitational field. One word from the gray-haired woman, and 1,000 ships would become 1,000 expanding clouds of subatomic vapor. The total annihilation of the hegemony's military might would leave their home worlds defenseless. 30 seconds, Chen stated. Kethvar's breath caught in his throat. His arms hung limp and defeated at his sides, the posture of absolute dominance shattered forever. The crushing weight of his own arrogance suffocated him. He looked at Yilen, a silent plea for a tactical miracle. Yilen simply nodded. There was no mathematical alternative. The Zephyrian fleet, Kethvar choked on the words, tasting ash. The fleet surrenders. Chen's expression softened, just a fraction, a flicker of mercy where destruction was absolute. A localized spatial anomaly registered on Yilen's secondary scanner, indicating a dark matter warhead powering down deep within the planet's mantle, a secondary weapon they hadn't even needed. 6 months passed in suffocating silence. The mighty Admiral Kethvar sat in a sterile cell aboard the prison ship Redemption. He spent his days staring out the narrow viewport at the blue-green marble below, trying to comprehend the magnitude of his failure. The hegemony had never surrendered a single vessel in its history, let alone an entire armada. High Commander Zethal had been forced to the negotiation table. They quickly discovered the humans were strangely generous captors. Crews were fed properly. Communications with home worlds were permitted under strict monitoring. Chen herself visited the flagship weekly, sipping her coffee, discussing philosophy while the balance of galactic power completely inverted. Your species conquers worlds through superior technology and numbers, Chen had told Yilen during one of those visits. We survived through cunning and determination because we are defenders, not conquerors. The peace negotiations concluded in a glass-walled room overlooking the stark lunar surface. The hegemony diplomats signed the treaty with trembling digits. They had learned the hardest lesson the universe could teach. The ability to destroy is easy. The wisdom to choose mercy is the most terrifying power of all. The scorched metal caught the sterile overhead lights. The needle still pointed home. Now it pointed toward peace.